Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Tuning In, Learn to Be Your Own Psychic, where we move one episode at a time away from the need for external validation and towards strong, confident trust in our own intuition. You guys don't need psychics, you are psychic. So, this is episode 2, and in this episode, we are going to talk about intuition. I think it's a very strong fundamental concept that we need to dive into. We're going to talk about what it is, we're going to talk about how it works, and we are going to touch on imagination too because it's such an important piece to our understanding. So we will get into that. I will say, I can't tell you how often I hear some version of, but is it just my imagination? I can't tell if that's intuition or imagination. Am I just imagining that? Surely, surely imagination is playing a part, but that does not discredit the experience. And that's what we need to learn. So we will be sure to cover that here also. We're going to start with just a broad stroke of what intuition is, and we're going to talk about that for a minute. So, intuition is our ability to navigate or work with knowledge or information without a fact based or logical foundation. We will experience some form of information or knowing, some type of inspiration that we will then just trust and follow. This is intuition. This is done in an extra sensory manner. We aren't looking things up on YouTube videos to see how they're done. We aren't researching them. We aren't Googling them. None of those things. We are just existing and having the insight somehow. By somehow, that's going to be a broad range of things because we are all going to experience our own intuition differently than some other person might. But it is something that we all have. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's our inner guidance system. And we are all meant to live by this guidance system. It's the nudge that has us call our sister out of the blue. We call her up, we find out that she really needed to talk about something. It's the feeling we have when we decide we want to go a different way to work one morning, only to find out later that we avoided a disastrous situation. It's the sudden urge we have to go down to the store only to find that something we've been waiting for to come back into stock is not only in stock, but on sale even. All of these things, when we make a decision just out of inspiration or just knowing or just even wanting, just feeling a little nudge, and we find out that it has benefited us or somebody else, even, that's intuition working. It's not just that. Intuition is where our psychic connection lives. It is some varying degree of ESP, whether we are unintentionally engaging or practiced and purposefully seeking answers. What does that mean, ESP? Well, ESP is extrasensory perception, and that is to say it is perception that happens outside of the physical sense, right? Extrasensory, when we are working with the five senses, we are working with touch, sight, taste, sound, smell. This inspiration, this information, the knowledge we get through our intuition is happening extrasensory. We aren't physically seeing it, tasting it, touching it. It's not a physical experience. It is happening in an extrasensory manner. I should reiterate, intuition is where our psychic connection lives. Now, it is my humble opinion that the difference between intuition and psychic abilities is nuanced. It is differentiated by too far of a degree, and it is more reasonably interchangeable than it is necessary to discern between the two. Intuition is often a beginning stage, the start of a sliding scale, if you will, the scale directly proportional to your ability to tune in, and intuition being the initial, most natural of the efforts. I just feel like you should understand that I'm always working with that perspective in mind. Now, the most basic form of intuition is in desire, drive, a sudden pull to do something, inspiration, the little nudge, the something in something told me. Listen to something, something is your friend. As we learn to trust and follow something, our connection strengthens and we experience this cycle of growth. We trust, we follow, we see the results, and then we trust more, and then we follow more, and then we see results. So there's this cycle of growth, trust, and mastery, and that cycle repeats as we go, never ending. And as long as you are allowing yourself to grow within that cycle, then your intuition will grow, your gifts will grow, and you will start to experience this amazing, abundant, peaceful life. Now, if we never trust our friend something and we fight it or talk ourselves out of it all the time, then we stay here and we never grow. It is the way. Okay, let's pivot for just a few minutes and talk about imagination. Imagination is so important. The problem with imagination is that it gets a bad rap. It has a reputation that automatically conjures the act of dismissal based on some perceived lack of merit. Now, this perceived lack of merit is conditioned, okay? Because we are taught that it's what kids do, it's how kids play, it's daydreaming, it's not serious, it's not real, it's meant to be ignored outside of playtime. And that creates this dynamic where we often dismiss our intuition as just our imagination. And that, my beautiful people, is a problem. It is a huge problem. So, imagination is not just where we create, imagination is the canvas on which we receive extrasensory information. If we are working with our extrasensory perception, which is outside of the physical senses, where do you think you are receiving this information? Well, you are receiving it on the canvas of your imagination. When you are in a guided meditation and you are visualizing, where do you think you are visualizing? In your imagination. When you are experiencing clairaudience, where do you think you are hearing that sound? On the canvas of your imagination. To be honest, this is what makes listening so hard. It's not really about the way it happens, though. It's more about how we all grew up hearing the imagination be dismissed and associated with not real. Listen to me when I tell you, just because it is tied to your imagination doesn't mean it's not real. That's one of the biggest things that you will have to unlearn along this journey so that you can trust the information that you're getting when you get it. If you had no imagination, you would not be able to experience your senses in an extrasensory manner. You wouldn't see with your mind's eye. You wouldn't hear with your mind's ear. These abilities to experience information outside of the physical senses are necessary for your intuition to be received and are rooted in the power of your imagination. Remember that. Now back to intuition. Intuition is something that everybody has. There are no exclusions. Everybody, everybody has access to almost all psychic abilities. We all have some ability that is innate, and whatever is not natural for us, we can develop the rest. With the exception of clear empathy, no one person has any ability that no other person can't possibly develop. It's just a matter of what it looks like for you specifically, because that's going to differ from everybody else. Everybody's going to have their own experience with each ability. How you invest in developing that muscle will also play a role in how well you master whatever gift you are trying to master. Everybody's experience will be different. Some people are born prodigies and it's an effortless endeavor, and some people will struggle with even basic nudges. Think playing the piano, right? There are people that are born with a seemingly supernatural ability to play, while another might need to learn very basics of reading music, very basics of piano, but with lessons and practice and support and investing in that ability, both people have the potential to play brilliantly. Playing the piano is not something that people can't do. Everybody has the opportunity. Now, if you are expecting intuition to be loud and obnoxious and stop you dead in your tracks and make you gasp, that's not at all what it's like. If you have been influenced by the depiction that Hollywood presents to you, if you watch That's So Raven or Charmed and you're expecting dramatic, let that go, because it's not like that. Intuition is super subtle. It's super quiet. It's very, very, very quick. It's so easy to miss. You will need to learn to recognize your hits. Do you feel a pull in your sacral? Do you think I should? And then give yourself direction. Do you just have a hankering to do something? Do you just know? Do you just get sudden inspiration? If you don't know yet, you might want to start a journal and pay attention to what made you do something that seemed to coincidentally work out in your benefit. Self-awareness will be a huge part of discovery for you. So this is also something that you'll want to pay close attention to. Now, if you are worried about my own thoughts versus intuition, we can try to diagnose those based on nature, okay? Intuition will often be random, singular, dropping down from the outside, and very, very, very soft and fast. Rarely will it be attached to a feeling, especially not your own. Now, your thoughts are rarely random and singular. They will rise up from the inside and often be more defined, heavier, often linked together like a chain, and they are subject to emotional ties. That's probably the best way that I know how to describe the difference. They are similar enough that the concern is reasonable. Over time, you will start to recognize the difference, and that's just going to be a practice makes perfect kind of thing for you. When does intuition happen? Maybe that will help. Well, intuition is always happening. It doesn't stop just because you aren't tuning in or good at receiving or discerning. You absolutely do strengthen your ability as you go. The more you learn, the more comfortable you get, the more you trust and follow, the more you strengthen your ability to work with your intuition. But you never lose the intuition. So even if you aren't working to strengthen or develop that relationship with your intuition, it doesn't go away. It never goes away. The key for you is to remove yourself from the noise I always equate intuition with hummingbirds. If you're a fan, if you, like my mom does, set out hummingbird feeders every year so you can just enjoy watching them on the back porch, then you'll understand this. When you are sitting on the back porch, the hummingbirds will be flying. If you're just sitting there worrying about life and all your woes and troubles and overthinking and surrounded by all kinds of chaos and noise, you are going to miss the hummingbirds because they are quiet and they are fast. I mean, those suckers are fast. But if you can get quiet and still and remove yourself from the noise and just sit back and watch, guess what? You're going to see a hummingbird. You might need some patience, but you're going to see a hummingbird. And the more you can do that, the more you will learn to recognize the hummingbird. And the more that you can recognize a hummingbird, the more hummingbirds you'll see. The hummingbirds are your intuition. They are flying either way. They're there. Your relationship with your intuition, your ability to receive, listen, follow, this is on you. It will be up to you to get quiet, to remove the noise so that you can receive. And when you receive, discern. And when you discern, follow through. So once you are adept at seeing the hummingbirds, how does it work? You just do what you feel. You just follow the intuition. Trust the direction and the flow. Okay. If you like Harry Potter, you'll love this. Felix Felicis, Liquid Luck. It's not luck at all, really. In the 6th book of the series, Harry wins a vial of Felix Felicis. It's called Liquid Luck. This is, and I quote, bottled good fortune. Brewed correctly, the drinker of this potion will be lucky in all their endeavors. And while there may be luck involved in using it, the essence of how this potion works showcases what it looks like for one to trust in one's own intuition, named in this example Felix. As it states in the story, for as soon as he took the potion, he had the sensation that Felix knew what it was doing and that he needed only follow its inspiration, however unlikely the approach seemed, as a means of accomplishing his goal. And then he follows its inspiration. In spite of any prior planning, in spite of any agreed on approach, any research that was done, any observation, because they took time prior to this night to get schedules, to figure out routines, to watch. They planned, they researched. The minute he took this potion, that all went out the window. None of that mattered. He was acting purely on what Felix suggested was the right thing to do. In their research and observation, they knew that by routine, a certain person was going to be in a certain place at a certain time. He did not go there. He fancied going somewhere else, complete opposite way, and he followed that. In following that, he actually ran into the person that was supposed to be somewhere else having dinner. Now, admittedly, once he had taken the potion, he recognized that the potion was illuminating a few steps of the path at a time. He could not see the final destination, but he knew that he was going the right way. And as such, he follows each prompt Felix gives him, meaning he listens to his intuition. He trusts it completely with all the confidence in the world. He doesn't need the whole picture. He doesn't need promises of the end results. He trusts the direction he's headed in, and he trusts that he is going the right way and that it's all going to work out. He doesn't need to know how. He's not concerned with those things. He is listening and following. Felix tells him where to go, when to go, what to say, even when to not say something. Every step of the way, he is either getting a feeling, hearing guidance, or just knowing what to do, and he does it unquestioningly. Even though it might not make sense at the moment, and even though he can't see the end results, he knows it will get him the results, even if he has no idea what that is going to look like. And it isn't a straight path. He wants one thing from one person, but there are several hours worth of interactions and events that get him there. When it's all said and done, he's gone miles around a straight line. But it all makes perfect sense in hindsight. None of it he knew beforehand, but after, it all made perfect sense. And that's it. That's following your intuition. Isn't that beautiful? I love that. So how do we tune in intentionally? Great question. I'm glad you asked. Remember the hummingbirds. Well, you have to practice getting still and being open to experience the flybys, if you will. Now, what your hummingbirds look like and how you witness them will differ for you than it will for other people. You'll hear me say that a lot. It's super, super important. You can't rely on people to tell you what your experience is going to be like. Nobody knows. I don't know how you're going to experience this. I know how I do, and I know that you will, and I know that it will be different from how I do. Nobody can tell you what your experience means to you. This is something you are just going to have to figure out for yourself, and that's going to apply to everything along your spiritual growth journey. It is the way. Now, with that being said, we can all work at getting in alignment to receiving using the same practices. And we'll talk about these briefly before we close out for the day. The most important thing is healing, okay? None of us are on a spiritual growth journey alone. We are all on a healing and spiritual growth journey. Healing is absolutely part of it for everybody. So make sure you are doing your work to heal and move to whole self integration. Make sure you are practicing self-love and self-care every day. Every day. Now, to start right away are mindfulness and meditation. I give this advice to everyone and I will continue to do so. I personally learned mindfulness far too late in my own practice, and I firmly believe that it should be taught from day one. Day one. Mindfulness is being in the now moment. It's being able to detach yourself from the emotional connection of what you are experiencing and look at it through the eyes of an observer objectively so that you can gain clarity. It is making sure that when you stray too far in future focused thought, you can move it back to now, being in the now moment. Meditation is also very important. Meditation should be done daily eventually. It should be a daily practice. Now, this isn't always going to look the same, and you can do this about 1,000 different ways. Find the ways that work for you and implement them. A lot of people, because we are a society with busy minds, a lot of people have a lot of trouble clearing their minds, which is not really what you're doing. You're not really trying to blank your minds out. You are training your mind to focus, is what you're doing. And so when we're sitting and we're trying to do that, the thoughts come in, and it's a difficult thing and it's very frustrating. Understand that even if the thoughts come in, you acknowledge it, push it back out, refocus. It feels like you are getting nowhere, but I promise you, have patience. You are, in fact, training your mind to focus, and it will get better. If it's still a big challenge and it frustrates you into not even wanting to try, then do other things. Do things that are a hobby that you can get lost in. Garden, draw, dance, do guided meditations, or give yourself a task that is challenging enough to keep your focus, but not difficult enough to frustrate you. Okay, things like that. You will train it to focus over time, and that's what you're doing. You are training yourself to open up to information and to focus into a mindful state. Meditation is a very, very, very important piece of your spiritual growth journey. There are other things. I mean, we could be here all day, but we can't get into any of them too deeply just because time is limited here. So I would finish with an exercise to practice with. Take an hour a couple of times a week and set it aside to practice listening for direction. Do your own little Felix Felicis, right? And let me explain. You just plan to do nothing particular for an hour. You'll have the intention to be mobile and to be moving, but you won't have a set of instructions that you have to follow. So you just walk out of your front door and you just do. If you feel like you need to get in the car and drive, get in the car and drive. If you feel like you just need to go for a walk, go for a walk. Just follow that guidance. Do that for an hour. If you are walking and you feel inspired to stop and smell a flower, then stop and smell the flower, okay? Do that for an hour, and then when you finish, go back home. Journal your experience. Make note of anything that came out of it that you found significant. If you stopped and smelled the flower, and then you met a dog that also wanted to stop and smell the flower, and then you started talking to the dog's owner, and you found out that you both like to play a certain game, and now you have a new online gaming buddy. I mean, anything can happen. So journal your experience, write what happened for you with that, and you will start to see the ways that following your intuition lead you to something that is beneficial for you. Okay, that's going to be all for this episode. I love you all. My website is rickyray.com. Visit me at your leisure. I wish you abundance in all forms. Thank you for hanging out and tuning in with me.